Well, good evening and welcome to our work session for the month of April. Glad you could come out and join us. Hopefully it won't storm and get you wet going home this evening. But we're glad to have you. We like to begin our meetings with a moment of silence, and we'd love to have you join us if you'd like to. Thank you. Okay, Pledge of Allegiance and School Highlight, Okami Academy. Glad to have you all with
Good
us.
evening. I believe I know everybody except for Dr. Sloan. I'm Tracy Long from Okami Academy, and I brought 3 of our staff members with us, Mr. Parker, our guidance counselor, Ms. Rogers, our ELA teacher, and Ms. Frick, our mental health counselor, and we'll be happy to let you in this week. So stance and pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Again, we're Okami Academy, the alternative school. We service grades 7 through 12. Right now we have about 50 students that we're working with, ranging from 7 to 12th graders. It's been a little bit of a different year for us. Every year's different though in alternative education, but just going to talk about 3 things tonight. The first thing we'll talk about is our service learning. Most of you know that Dr. Sloan, we have 4 goals that we send to the state, and service learning is a huge part of what we do in our program. This year we have partnered with the City of Walhalla again, and as you can see from the plants, we work with them to prepare for Sertoma for the Oktoberfest. We also did all the plantings in downtown last spring, and then we also went back and cleaned up as well, and we are working with them actively again. We've got pansies started in our makeshift greenhouse that we put inside one of the classrooms. The other picture you see up there is our partnership with James and Brown. We did a books reading with a group of kids. We went over, we played with the kids. We did a play on anti-bullying and just really made it a big day, 2-day event for Ms. Robertson's students and teachers. And we've been asked by a couple of other elementary schools next year to perhaps do the same thing with them. If we have the group that can pull it off, we'll definitely do that. We're always looking for partnerships. And then the second slide I wanted to talk about is each year we do a big Pay It Forward initiative. Last year our Pay It Forward was with the City of Walhalla. This year we worked with Tammy's Farm, paying it forward. As you can see there, we ran chicken wire, we transferred chickens from one pen to the next. We did pea gravel throughout that whole area where the raised beds were. We mucked the barn stalls for the goats and everything and transferred that. But the 2 people that own this farm is an SRO for the district, and her fiance is a paramedic. So we paid it forward for somebody that needed a little bit extra help to keep themselves going. And this spring, again, we'll do our plantings uptown with the pansies, and always looking for something. If y'all hear something, send them our way. Another thing that we do have a good partnership that we're maintaining and carrying forward is Grace's Closet. We are an official drop-off. We wash, we sort, we do everything for them prior to them bringing material up here to the district office downstairs. Now, as we move forward to the next part of our presentation today, we spend a lot of time working on relationships in our building, as most of you know, and that's the most critical thing. If we can't build a relationship, we can't really get the behaviors under control to get them back. So with Ms. Rogers, I'm going to ask her to come next. We do 3 intensive things a day. We have a morning circle, then we get on our schedule. And she's going to talk about some of the things that we did in morning circle and a new initiative we've done there. And then she'll be followed by our counselors, where we have Ms. Frick runs a girls circle, and Mr. Parker has started a boys council, because sometimes the groups need to be separated to really target some things. So I'll turn it over to my team and let them share some with you.
Hi, I'm very excited to present this. Most of y'all know I'm a really big advocate for our school, for our kids, and we have started a podcast with the students. And it's called Those Kids, because they all are aware that they are those kids. And it's a way for them to have a voice, to be taken seriously, and to express themselves. And we've got 3 episodes. They are on Spotify and on iTunes. I figured out how to do the podcast hosting and get everything uploaded, and I am happy to say that as of today we have around 100 listens. So people are sharing it, people are listening to it. And what I do is on a day that I'm going to do a podcast in the morning circle, I put a topic up on the board and students can volunteer. You know, they don't have to, it's completely voluntary and it's completely anonymous. If we do accidentally use names, I edit the names out. And so I'll give them a topic. So our first one was talking about sleeping in class. And I just asked them questions that I, as a teacher, wanted to know. Like, what do you think is the problem with sleeping in class? You know, what do you think is an appropriate punishment, and so on. And they took it very seriously, and I liked what they had to say. So I did another one, Fit to be Tried, and we talked about controlling anger. And some of the students were very honest about what they do to deal with their anger, and they even gave advice about what teachers can do to help students like themselves. And our last one was Youth and Consequences. This was a very interesting one because we talked about punishments and what they felt were appropriate punishments, and would they rather have corporal punishment back, and like all kinds of interesting things, and I try to tie it into a current event. So if you will click on the actual site, it should be, linked. And so I can give you a quick, just scroll down a little bit.
It was very easy to find. Just went in my pocket.
See, yeah, that's right. I mean, we're up. So if you want, yes. And if you will scroll down a little bit, maybe hit like, maybe that long bar right there, the next one over, should be around 5 minutes, yeah. It'll give you kind of a, I guess hit that one. Welcome to episode 3 of Those Kids podcast. The podcast that gives Okami Academy alternative school students a voice, a place to express themselves. Yeah. So you can kind of hear them talking a little bit. That's really good. I like the physical aspect of this. What do you think?
I think the first, it would be like a 3-strike thing. So the first strike would be like a restriction, like taking something away, if they're for phone, for example, because nowadays 6-year-olds do have phones.
True.
2 would probably be, I'd probably just lock them, like not lock them, but like, tell them to stay in their room.
You almost said lock them up. You almost said lock them up.
Come up with some sort of creative punishment. It just depends on the scenario. Like if it was something to do with a mess, I think it was, I would make like a mess and I had to clean it or something.
Yeah, so it's kind of like lesson logic, what you do. So you can hear a little bit, and I always try to put some probing questions, up. And so what I'm hoping to get from y'all is the little wish list that I have up there. I'd love to advertise it a little bit. I would love to be able to put something on our school sign so that when parents drive by, they can see it. Maybe an announcement or a link on the website, and even an email blast to teachers and administrators, because one of my goals with this is for teachers to get to know these types of students a little bit more and see what they have to say, because they actually do have a lot of really good things to say, but it also gives them some insight into our program. And that's always been a platform of mine, is getting everybody to understand what we do at the alternative school, why we do it, and how we do it. So, hopefully, y'all can give me some feedback at some point about how I can get this out into the community and our future plans. We're going to have additional segments. I'm going to have kids read from their journals. They're going to have, kind of man on the street interviews. So hopefully it's going to grow. And then maybe bring the students into some hosting, some co-hosting, and just kind of give them ownership of it. They're very excited about it. This is kind of a trendy thing right now, is podcasting. And every time that I show them that we've gotten a few more listens, it's very exciting to watch their reaction to it. So, Those Kids podcast. Find it, share it. We're excited. Thank you.
Yeah, and the neat thing about that is the artwork that was done by one of Ms. Rogers' students.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. So the artwork is theirs. Of course, we're going to try to get a theme song going, and the kids will write that. So I'm going to try to involve them in as much of it as possible, because it is their podcast, because it's about them. All right. Thank you.
Okay, so obviously we're doing a lot of exciting things at Okami Academy, and we're all very enthused by just how much the kids do sort of go with us, you know. So we do Girl Circle, and I do this once a week, and we usually do it from 30 to 45 minutes. And we take a diversity of girls, middle school and high school right now, and it's sort of like a structured support group. So I am the facilitator. Ms. Rogers sometimes comes in and co-facilitates me depending on the size of the group. And it just fosters self-esteem, it helps girls maintain authentic connections with their peers, counters trends towards self-doubt, and allows for genuine expression through the verbal sharing and creative activities. So we do journal articling, we do drawing, we do anything that's going to help both the like it says, the creative and the verbal sharing of girls. Because what we find is that sometimes girls have a tendency to want to fight each other, but this has been a good way for them to relate to one another. Examples of topics include diversity, body image, relationship with peers, past to the future, and expressing their individuality. So it's really nice to see sort of the group mentality that they can come up with that helps them not only protect themselves in the alternative school, but also protect each other.
And our last program is very similar to Girls Circle. It's all part of the One Circle Foundation. And I was able to go to training in the fall on Boys Council. And Boys Council is very similar, with the exception of the fact that we kind of do it a little bit more structured for the young men. We have a similar flow of each meeting, which is once a week, for about 45 minutes to an hour, and we find that the separation of genders has really helped a lot, especially with the boys, because that's when they really start to open up, is when they don't have girls that they're trying to impress or they're afraid to be embarrassed in front of, they will open up. And right now I'm working with middle school. We have a lot of middle school boys, so I'm working strictly with middle school in this first session this semester. And getting them to kind of calm down, figure out what a group focus is, teaching them what group counseling is, how it can benefit them. That's been part of the growing process for me and for the boys. And then on top of that is we're getting to the point where they're starting to address issues that are bothering them or that are part of their problems, part of their issues that they've had, and really, really start to focus on each other and give each other that respect and that help to lift each other up. And so it's been a lot of fun with the boys. There's a picture of a few of the boys there that are in my group now, and we'll finish this up just probably prior to us going into ready and pass testing so that they can turn their focuses onto those things. But we're really excited about this. The training was amazing. It comes with a free curriculum of many activities that I can pull from, plus, you know, Ms. Frick and myself and Ms. Rogers, we always try and do something a little bit more centralized towards our kids and what the theme is that they may need. And so we're very excited about that. And the boys, I mean, Ms. Rogers' boys, they beg her all day, we're having Boys Council today, we're having Boys Council today, because I try and do it every Friday. And so I'm excited that they're excited. And that's what keeps our program moving. It's what allows us to all work together seamlessly. And the kids, you know, like Ms. Frick says, they just go with it. And it's wonderful to have that. And to have them really working on themselves and their behaviors.
And do y'all have any questions for us? Anything about what we've got going on? At your area, I placed a save the date. It's our end of the year celebration. We'd love to have you, so if you can put that on your calendar, and we'll send a calendar invite to you within the next few weeks. But thank you for your time. Thank you for your continued support.
We'll see if Twitter helps you out. We put it out there, so we'll see if you get any new,
oh my gosh, I'm so excited.
new people. So
Oh, thank you so much. I really appreciate it. Very exciting.
Thank each of you for being here, and thank you for what you do. That's a great place over there. I've been there many times, you know, but it's a great school, and thank you. Okay, approval of agenda. Anyone notice any corrections, additions, deletions? Well, without objection, we will approve the agenda for tonight. The agenda is approved. Public comment, Ms. Gibson?
Ms. Cruz. Do y'all mind if I just stay here and?
We'd rather you come up here just for the record because we can get you on video there.
Okay.
Just state your.
If you'll speak into the mic, that way it's clear for the recording that we're
Okay.
doing. There.
Is this good?
you want
Yeah,
the
as long
podium?
as you're pretty close to it.
Okay. I would like to graciously ask the board to consider the data collection methods to assist decision-making involving the 2020-21 school calendar. Employees and parents were given the opportunity to provide input through a survey. However, many parents did not complete the survey. Simply based on the number of those who participated, was there a measure put in place to make sure employees did not have the opportunity to also complete the survey as a parent if they had children who attended the schools in Oconee County? If this security measure was not put in place, then the data could have been skewed and biased, resulting in similar statistics for the two groups, which is something that was seen when you look at the statistics for the two groups. Due to the low number of parents providing input, the board, and upon the board's request, the district made additional attempts to collect data. A link to a second survey was placed on the school's website, the district's website, and an invitation was aired on WYFF that requested input from the surrounding area. When WYFF broadcast the request for input, this method created a sampling error known as convenience sampling of individuals watching, and it forced the data to be biased simply due to the age of the majority of individuals who view local news broadcasts. So, when considering the validity of surveys which may be biased, can be severely weakened. And so I ask you, when you look at that data, should you question the validity of that data? Okay? I want to make a suggestion to the board, and it is to give input for the individuals who a modified calendar may have the most impact on, which is the parents. So I would like to request that data be collected from most parents in the district through the registration process in August of 2019. The online registration can be customized by simply adding a question regarding the parent's preference of a modified calendar. This method would not introduce sampling errors, would not require additional costs to the district, and the board would get input from the majority of the parents. With this data, the board could then make their decision on the 2021 school calendar in September or October, which is the same time frame the board approved the 2019-20 calendar. Now, my next question is there research that shows that a modified calendar improves students' test scores? At best, the research shows mixed results. The article, The Effects of Modified School Calendars on Student Achievement and on School and Community Attitudes by Cooper, Carlton, and Meltson, published in 2003, states that the quality of evidence on modified calendars is poor. The evidence is quite small. The standard deviation is equal to 0.06, which is far more than 3 standard deviations out. And so since it's so low, it is not considered statistically significant improvement. Okay? So my question is there, and I have done as much research as I can, but I'm having difficulties finding published research that says a modified calendar improves student achievement or test scores. Now, if the board still elects to support or wants to choose a modified school calendar, will students who are identified as needing additional support be required to attend during the breaks as an intervention program? If so, where will the funding for the intervention to cover the increased costs such as transportation, meals, building conditioning, and instruction, Where would those funds come from? Our job as educators is to ensure our students are college and career ready. To accomplish this task, should we have similar schedules to colleges and universities? When you are making your decision, think about the number of higher education institutions that give students a 2-week break during the semester. On the traditional calendar, employees have 8 to 10 weeks to schedule employee vacations to limit the impact of reduction in staff. Please consider the impact of a modified calendar on employers and employees needing time off for childcare, and the impact it would have on our local businesses. During the past 5 years, SDOC has made several drastic changes to include delayed start, semester block scheduling at the high school level, closure of a high school, and one-to-one technology in the classroom, to name a few. Upon reviewing our district's ranking in the past 5 years, we have moved from the top teens in the state to, I saw a report just recently that has us listed in the top 20s in the state. So basically, we haven't dropped quite 10, but we have dropped. So if we're making all these drastic changes and we're going in the opposite direction of striving to become a top 10 in South Carolina, I'm just respectfully asking you, before you make another drastic change in Oconee County, look at the data, look at the results. Is there things to support that this is going to allow us to move up to be a top 10 in the district? And I appreciate your time.
Thank you. Okay, was that the only speaker, Ms. Gibbs? Okay. Discussion items, policy IHBG homeschooling, Dr. Thornton.
Yes, so I have kind of a little confession to make on this one, as well as some information. For a number of years, we have allowed we had an agreement with OCA and some homeschoolers where we would allow them to take career center classes because enrollments were low in a couple of those classes. Well, this year at one of our high schools, we had a student want to take an AP class, and we kind of allowed it under the same rules that we allowed the career center. And then we found out that we really shouldn't have done that according to our policy. We did not feel like we could yank that student out of the class at that time when we discovered that. So she's still in the class, and it's fine. It was another one of those low enrollment classes. It was an AP biology class, only 6 or 7 students in the class, and she just added 1 to it. And so it's not a big deal. What we've done in the past for those is to take the amount of state funding we get for a high school student and divide that by 8, because a high school student would take 8 classes, and that's the money that we're not getting from the state for that student, and charge that to the parents to take the class. And that's what we've done, kind of across the board for these situations, and that's what the young lady's doing this spring. We talked about it with high school principals a month or so ago, and we would like to try making that policy. Our high school principals feel like if families if they were willing to pay for that state funding that we're foregoing, that it's not a terrible thing. It's usually very positive students. The young lady who's taken the class this spring was already taking advantage of the state rule with sports. She's already participating in sports. As a matter of fact, she's been here and been recognized because she was a state champion at one of our schools as a homeschooler, but competing for West Oak. And we just don't see it as a major problem, and we would like to change our policy that would allow middle school students who are homeschooled to take only fine arts classes. That would allow a middle school student to come in and take band. But again, very specific. Parents would have to drop them off at that specific time. They could go in, take the class, come back out, and go home. High school, we would want to extend that to fine arts classes, AP classes, and career center classes, with the caveat that you can't do this for more than one period at a time. Because if you did it more than one, then just come on and be a full-time public school student. You know, if you're going to do it more than just a minor part of the day. And we identified the areas that we felt like would be maybe the most difficult for a homeschool family to recreate in their homes. It's pretty hard to have a marching band in your homeschool class, or it's, you know, some parents feel very competent teaching most subject areas, but when you get to the AP level, maybe that's a little bit challenging. And then, of course, career center classes are tough to teach, can be tough to teach at home. If kid wants to take welding, well, not every household has welding material to be able to teach. So anyway, the high school principals looked at this and they're supportive of this, and we think it could kind of bridge the gap between private school, homeschool, and then the school district, and it may cause some families to let a kid take a chance on a class, and then they get to the school and think, hey, this isn't so bad, and maybe they'll join us full time. Not that we think homeschool's a bad thing, and just if you're wondering, the number I saw, I think earlier this year, was about 5%. I think we have about 500 homeschool students in Oconee County, which compared to our 10,000 in the public schools would be about 5%. So that's just a rough number. But we feel like this could be a positive thing, and would like for you to consider it in the next 2 board meetings.
Any questions of Dr. Thornton? That'll be on the agenda for 2 weeks from now.
2 weeks from today, and then again
second reading.
in May. Yes.
Okay, March financial report. Ms. Moore.
Okay, you all have the report, and I'm happy to take any questions. I didn't see anything that was particularly out of the ordinary. I think you did.
We're getting close. The year's almost over, though.
We are getting close. Yes, sir?
At the, towards the bottom, there is a trust mark voluntary benefit solution. What is that?
We allow employees to voluntarily sign up for insurance from another company.
Oh, okay.
We've had Colonial for several years, and this year last year we bid that service out, and so now we have another company that also handles the benefits enrollment and offers insurance at the same time.
And this is less money. Then I just had a question. I saw where we had paid for cameras for the new buses. Do all of our school buses have cameras?
They don't come with them. We have to provide them, so we try to get them on there as quickly as possible. If we're losing a bus or taking an older bus, we take the camera off of it and then put it on there. But sometimes there is a gap in between when we can get a new bus and get one on there. But we have a guy that works for us, who's a driver, who helps us with those, and we have to install cameras and radios.
Okay.
And so that's pretty expensive.
We have enough for every bus. It's just that occasionally there's a lag. Is
Yes.
that accurate?
Yeah, and occasionally there's one that doesn't work properly. So, I mean, we try to get those fixed as quickly as possible, but we watch a lot of bus video.
Thank you.
Got another question?
Yes, sir.
Current capital expenditure budget page. Okami Academy re-roof the portables. Were they not just for storage?
They are for storage, but apparently they needed
A roof.
We've kept those, yes, they are currently for storage, but they're also, in the event that we need, those are about the only ones we have left in the district, in the event that we needed one for
We can move.
something else and somewhere. We hope that doesn't happen, but we felt like we had to keep something available to have if we needed it in the case of an emergency.
the best part of what Mr. Hamby just said is those are about the only two we have left in the district, so, or three. So,
yeah.
so that's a good thing, because we're
They're
almost
old
out of the
because I
court.
remember them.
That's right.
Yeah, we're getting ready to demolish the old ones at the maintenance and with the bus thing. We'll have Mr. Wright's office, and we'll have some bus people, offices, bus supervisors and portables, but we got Orchard Park. We got just a few, but we don't have near as many. But we just we waited, and we kind of felt like we had to have something just in case there were issues or a problem. It's also kind of a combination with the sheriff's department. They use them for training and things too.
Oh, I would just,
Sure.
was wondering about, I thought they were just there for storage. I have another question. The multiple account projects, you have the fund balance, you have a final column on the far right-hand side.
Yes.
You can scroll down a little further. There she is. So where she's in black, in other words, the 9,190, so that's money that we didn't spend.
That we are working, that's the new career center.
Right.
And so far, we have not spent all of the revenue that we have
Where does the revenue go if we don't spend it? What account?
back into the funds for the
Okay,
capital
'cause-
improvements.
All right.
No, it'll be spent.
Well, I got excited when I saw black.
Lot more than that will be spent.
Well, and you can see we've only received $2.46 million on that, and over the next couple of years, we'll get a lot more.
Yeah, I need to explain that a little bit. What
Yeah, because
we
it
do
didn't quite add up.
is, we put all of the bond proceeds into one fund. And then we have the other projects that we're working on. And as they spend money, I transfer the funds from that common account into the individual account. So sometimes I don't do that in a timely manner. So you'll see a negative, and then the next month you may see a zero, or you might see a black number.
Okay.
Same thing with Walhalla L and West Oak High. Those projects need some more revenue, so in the next little while, I'll take some revenue from that common account to zero out those two projects, and they'll be done.
Yeah, because I figured out that we needed some more revenue in there.
Yeah. But that should be it. Scott told me this week that
Yes,
there were
those are
no
the
more,
final
no more
bills.
invoices.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anything else? Any other questions? Ms. Moore, I think you're still up on the FY20 general fund budget.
Okay. We have a little PowerPoint that we're going to use tomorrow in the presentation to the county council. And I want to go through that first, and then we'll look at the details that you have in your notebook. Not going through the whole notebook, but we will hit the high spots. So, let's see. This budget is prepared using the Ways and Means projections. We don't have anything from the Senate yet. We're hearing that the Senate wants to add some more money to the base student cost, but that's not final. And their debate starts next week, so we don't have anything concrete from them. You all know that our main funding stream is from the Education Finance Act, and this is just a little history of what the state has funded and what the actual obligation is. And for the 1920 year, it's $3,095, and the actual funding level is $2,485 unless the Senate is able to add some more to that. This slide just gives some history on our local revenue. You can see we have increased since 2013. Most of that came 2 years ago after the reassessment. We got a pretty big bump up from the county council. The other growth in the middle line comes from the Tier 3 reimbursements. Every year they increase just a small amount, and that's based on the Southeastern Regional Consumer Price Index and the state growth in the state population. So it's very small. This shows how stable our school millage has been. It's been 110.1 for 5 years, and in the last 2 years, 115.3. And we were happy in the years that it, let's see, let me go back to one thing. Let's go back to one slide. The year that our local revenue increased from 14-15 through 16-17, but the millage rate didn't increase, and that's because property values went up, and we were able to get more revenue while still having the same tax rate. And this is our fund balance history. We've been in really good shape for a while. This year, if the budget pans out the way we planned it, we would be below our policy level of 20%. That may not happen. You know, we usually come in with a little more money than what we budgeted, and hopefully that'll be the case this year. But you do need to know that if not, then we would be at 19%. Some of the concerns for this year, the 1% increase to retirement is continuing. We have 1% this year. We'll have another 1% the next 3 years. The state did pass a 4% increase for teachers, and they are supposed to be funding that. And we did get a big bump up in our revenue, and you'll see that whenever we get to the end. 89% of our budget is in personnel, and that 4% bumped that up really high. The increase, with the salaries increase, the matching payroll tax expenses increase as well. And we do have in this budget 3 additional mental health counselors. So that's part of the increases. This is just a picture of how much of our money goes to salary and fringe. You can see the darker blue area, the 63%, that's actually salary, and the 26% is fringe. So that leaves us 10%, just over 10%, to take care of utilities, all our supplies, all our insurance, all those other things that teachers need to be able to teach their classes. And now I'm going to let Mr. Handy talk about our teacher allocations, because that is a big part of what we spend money for, and he's the expert on that.
Well, it's real simple. We just use a spreadsheet. We have a formula, and you know our ratio for kindergarten is 26 to 1. We don't let it get above that before the year starts. It could grow over that during the year. Once we start the school year, we don't typically make adjustments. First, second, and third grade, the ratio is 23 students to the teacher, 1 teacher for the class. Fourth and fifth grade, the ratio is 26 to 1 again. So you can see, what I take is I look on Power School and I just roll up the next year's number. So I did it a little earlier this year so we wouldn't be behind the 8 ball with hiring. We actually did it on the 45th day. I reviewed it again on the 90th day to make sure there wasn't too much change. So what we did, if you look in the middle section, you can see what they have this year in the first column, and then the bold column is what they're scheduled to get next year, and then you see their plus or minus, and that's based on how many sections they gain. This does not include art, music, PE, and those. These are just classroom teachers in the K through 5. So like this year, Blue Ridge has 26. They lose 1, they'll go to 25. All due to enrollment numbers. Nothing changes unless it's based on the enrollment numbers. You can see we divide the art out. Art, music, and PE is done by sections, depending upon how many homeroom sections you have. And then academic assistants are the actually 32.5 extra positions that we have that have been in our budget for, I don't know, I was a principal when it started. It was since I've been here. I think when Dr. Truesdale came in, I think is when we kind of went to that to try to get some of our classes down, the class size originally, but now it's used for academic assistants. These are interventionists. Our gifted comes out of here. If we have reading recovery, it comes out of here. So those folks are in there. Special ed, those are all figured on a different formula. Marge meets with us and gives them those numbers. The bottom just shows total enrollment where we have PIP, and basically every PIP class I just go ahead and figure 10 kids. There may be a few less, there may be a few more, but they have 10. So if you see 20 there, they have 2 PIP classes. If you see pre-K, the max is 20. So if you see Brown has 3 pre-Ks. Everybody else has at least 1 now. And then you see the total enrollment. Administrators, you get 1.5. You get 1 up to 600. You get a half after that. Same with guidance. as we go through. Clerical notes haven't changed, so if you'll flip it to the next one, we'll talk about middle school, middle and high. Middle and high, I go back and we look at it, and Dr. Thorsland, and I don't even know if it was before him, if Mr. Royster set it up, but it was set up, and there's a trend factor, because with the middle and highs, we don't always tend to get everybody that we might think we have, or because of school choice, we maybe get more. So we take however many years that is, 4-year trend factor, and I again roll the numbers up from like the 5th grade going to 6th grade, 8th grade going to high school. I punch in those, and you'll see the trend factor, and you'll see a projected number, and then we give those at the high school on a 20.5 to 1 ratio. At the middle school, it's 19 to 1. And those numbers are, based on the best I can see so far around us, at least 2 to 3 students per teacher better than anybody around us. So when we start talking about budget and deficit, that's an area we probably have to look at.
And we put this in the budget presentation because such a large part of our budget is made up right here. Now this doesn't have, these two spreadsheets don't have all the positions in the district, because we've got maintenance, the staff up here, and some other positions that aren't reflected. But this is probably, those 2 pages is probably 75 to 80% of our budget. So that's what drives the SDOC budget in large part.
Hey, this was not in there last year, was it?
It was not.
No, it's the first year we've included this
is
in
nice, I
there.
like
So.
that.
But it's really informative as to why our budget's like it is.
Yeah, and you can see the same thing was done. We don't have academic assistants at the high school anymore. Those kind of, when we had the last budget cut of 2010 or whatever, 11, we took that away. They only had 1. Middle schools have 3, because we do have the Read to Succeed included 7th grade, and we're trying to make sure they have what they need to use those. Now, with that being said, they typically use them for whatever they feel like is best for their school. It may be another English teacher, could be another math teacher, that kind of thing. But you can see the overall numbers, and while there's been a downward trend in the population numbers, or the numbers of kids enrolled at West Oak Middle and West Oak High, we have tried to keep them as stable as we can with the teaching spots. The bottom part really doesn't change a whole lot. We redo our custodial, but we're so far behind on the number of custodial we have with the square footage and the formula we use. It's kind of hard to even talk about. But we did put this in there because we want to show how we figure out how many teachers are at each school. It's driven by the formula. It's driven by the number of kids in that grade level or in that building. Projected to be in that building. So, and again, we even use the trend factor. You can see a lot of negatives on there. If we didn't use those negative trend factors, we'd have more staff. So we try to look at the data and with that and see where it goes and who's gaining and who's losing.
And the other thing this ensures for us is, in a county with a countywide school system, there is sectionalism in our county. So there'll be some areas of the county that think other areas of the county get treated differently and things like this. This pretty much ensures that we're using numbers, and there are exceptions. Mr. Hamby has shared with you that we've got a couple of positions above what the normal allocation would be scheduled next year for the West Oak area, because they've seen a dip in enrollment, and it was going to be very difficult to ask a principal to reduce, I guess, what the numbers would say. So we might occasionally give a year or two to get to the number they're supposed to be at, but this is a formula-based system, and it doesn't show favoritism to one section of the county over another.
And the only way to adjust with the personnel for us is to change the ratios. And that's just a fact.
Gloria, let me ask you one question. This is one that used to come up a lot, and I'm sure you have the information, but on the 89% of the budget that goes to salary, have you got the administrative costs broken out from that anywhere, or could you break that out?
I can do that. You mean for salaries for administrators?
Yes.
I think I have something for the new, I have the dollar amounts for the new budget, but I don't have the
Just
percentages.
the percentage, just sometime.
Okay, sure. Another way that we use those student counts is in the allocations for supplies, for copiers, for supplies for the library. All of those allocations also come from the number of the projections that
Yeah.
Mr. Hanby.
The technology, we give them a base amount, then it's per pupil, so.
So, some of the limitations that we have with our budget, we've committed informally with the county council that we would want to stay at 115.3 and not ask for more taxes. We're hopeful that the value of the bill would go up, so we would get more revenue in that way. Salaries, again, these percentages are the salary and benefits numbers for the budget year that we're considering. The ones in the pie graph were from last year. They were actual numbers from the 18 year. And for capital improvements, that is the 31 mills, and 31 mills is actually debt service revenue to pay the payments and interest on the money that we borrow to do our capital improvements. So we have a set schedule of what the payments will be for next year. We try to plan that with Mr. Nurick so that we don't go above the 31 mills, nor do we drop below 31 mills. We want to keep it constant. So, and that money, we can't use the capital improvement money for our operational expenditures. So we're kind of limited in that sense. So our request is for the same dollar amount in local taxes, $47,736,808. It's the same as last year or the current year. The state tax reimbursements are slightly more this year because of the increase in the Tier 3 money. And so that would be a total of $66,531,458. And if this budget is adopted and funded, we would require the use of $3,480,000 from our fund balance.
But if we took that from the fund balance, it would still have a 19.1%.
No, sir.
No, that would bring that down?
Yes, sir.
It would, and the other thing this doesn't consider is if there's growth of the mill, that's not reflected in this. Growth of a mill would cause this number to be reduced. You know, and certainly if we wanted to ask for a mill and see if county council was amenable to that, that would be an option at this point. This is the first time we've talked publicly about the budget at all. We haven't gone to county council yet. That would be tomorrow. And we still budget conservatively in that we replace everyone who's hired for the school district this year. We put them in next year's budget, wherever they would be on the salary schedule. And several years ago, we had this discussion and the board asked us to keep doing it that way. But it essentially means if we've got a 32-year veteran teacher who's in the school district right now, Gloria puts that person in the budget next year as a 33-year veteran teacher. Well, every year we have some of those 32s and 33s and 34s who retire, and we replace them with people who are fresh out of college. And there's a pretty big pay gap between those two types of employees. So we always budget conservatively, meaning that it's going to look a little bit worse at this point than it actually ends up. So while that number is kind of sticker shock, it won't be as bad as it looks. Correct? You agree with that for the most part?
How much is a meal now, right now?
It's about 590,000.
Yeah, just a little under 600,000. And that's a operational meal. They're different.
Yes,
They're different for the other. Yes, sir.
so in your notebook, you have the same information that county council has been given. Every way that I can sort the budget, I have done that. So you can see it from the big picture down to the very details. But I did want to just take a minute, you should have a page like this in your notebook. So the top 9 lines on the revenue page, the very first page, those are the local taxes that we talked about in the PowerPoint presentation. The only change there is the increase to the Tier 3 money. In the next section, the non-tax local revenue, I increased the investment interest. We've been getting pretty good interest on the money that we have in the investment account, so I think we're good to do that. And then the state revenue sources, the biggest difference is the new line item that says state aid to classrooms. This is actually for the teacher raise. It is a separate line item at this point. There is some talk that they're going to roll that up into the EFA line. I haven't seen anything that shows that yet. So that's a big increase. And then the fringe benefit line, another $500,000. That's a good thing.
Flora,
Yes, sir.
if they do roll that up into the EFA, does it lose its identity then, and they say that they have put it in there when they really haven't?
That's possible. That's very possible.
Every time.
It's hard, a lot of times it's hard to tell. We get information from the state through my business officials, executive director, and she's really good, but it's hard to decipher if they're talking about doing that at the state level or if they're talking about giving us the revenue in one line. Sometimes what they do at the state level isn't always exactly the same as what we see when we get it.
Thank you.
And then the lines 24 through 27, these are revenues that come, the EIA, the first line is for teacher salary supplement and for teacher fringe. As far as we know, that's going to continue to be that way. And then the special revenue, that's other funds that we use. We get in a special revenue fund, but we transfer to the general fund to use for the same purpose as it would be in the special revenue fund. So that makes our total revenue 103,329,260. That's a big number. Yes, sir.
On the, at the very bottom, there was a spreadsheet that we had that showed that FY 2020 is 106 million?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Expenditures.
Expenditures, okay. So basically, our salaries and fringe increased by $5.2 million, wasn't it? The sum of those two.
Yes,
And
sir.
that's assuming that 4% raise is,
That's being included.
and that is extending that raise not only to teachers, that's extending that raise to all employees.
Thank you.
I think this is a good working document for
It is.
expenditures.
Sure.
You know, when it comes to income in the final budget will look probably quite a bit different from what we're looking at, but you've got you know, it's the best starting point with the information we have.
Well, the only increases that we made, other than the salary and fringe, are for the 3 mental health counselors, and our contract was gonna be for $30,000 instead of $25,000, so the first 3 that we have increased also, so that's $105,000 that we added. The resource officers all got a raise, and that's included in here. But we did not change any of the operating maintenance budgets, any of the allocations for the department levels, none of that has changed.
Good presentation, thank you.
Somebody did a lot of work.
Right.
Somebody did a lot of work.
My pleasure.
Anyone else? Anything? Okay, mental health counseling update, Ms. Simmons.
Yes. Dr. Thorsland and I have been working together with not only our school district mental health counselors, but also with our Anderson Oconee mental health counselors and their supervisor, Phil Manley. So what we have for you this evening is on the left-hand column is the list of our SDOC mental health counselors and the schools that they presently serve. And then in the right-hand column is the Anderson Oconee Pickens mental health counselors. I do want to just say that we have Nancy Drouse is added to that list because they are still waiting to look for someone to fill the slot that they have at the clinic. So Miranda Hosbian is working still at the clinic. So Nancy Drouse, they've assigned, has been working at Walhalla Middle School. So just want to make sure that y'all are aware that they're assisting with us as they're trying to fill their position. So we are really appreciative of that partnership. Nancy is the mental health counselor at the DAR school, so a lot of her students also attend Walhalla Middle School as well. And she serves the DAR students that attend Tanasi-Salem Elementary too. So we also have a future plan that is on the second page. When considering the future plan, we have talked to both Mr. Manley and the Anderson Oconee Pickens mental health counselors. We had a meeting with them, Dr. Gordsland and I, just to talk about their caseloads, talk about how they were feeling as far as we increase our number of mental health counselors, where they felt like our highest need was. Then I met with our SDOC mental health counselors to talk about the same topic with them because we would be, you know, taking some of their present caseload and moving that. So kind of getting their thoughts and input. So our future plan, it shows our same 4 SDOC counselors, Ms. Jordan, Ms. Lee, Ms. Swanson, and Ms. Frick, and how their caseload would change from our present list that we have now. And then in talking with Mr. Manley and Anderson Oconee Pickens mental health counselors, you can see where we've numbered 4, 5, and 6, where we would be starting with that increase. So we have partnered with AOP. They are going to go ahead and post all 3 of our positions, and for availability, we decided to go ahead and do that just based on the length of time it's been taking for them to find our present replacement, Ms. Ernstine, so that way we can go ahead and get started and moving in the right direction. So our first hire would take on Walhalla Middle School in Kiwi. That way, Miranda Hosbian would be full-time at Walhalla High School. Our next counselor, number 5, would take over Seneca Middle School and Ravenel, which would mean Joanna Brown would move to being full-time at Seneca High School. And then our 6th hire would take over West Oak Middle School and Orchard Park Elementary, making Cecilia Ernstine full-time at West Oak High School. And sharing the future plan with our present SDOC mental health counselors, they felt like this movement for the future was also appropriate, just making sure that our high schools have as much support as they possibly need. So we have agreement on all sides of our movement forward as we hire our 3 new mental health counselors over the course of time, and we're looking forward to the continued partnership. Mr. Manley and I will be meeting again this week. One thing I've enjoyed talking with Mr. Manley is just about procedures we have in place here in our district with like our suicide prevention policy, making sure we know how to communicate and work with our AOP counselors with the forms we're using in our district and how we're communicating with parents. And I think that it's going very well. So any questions for me?
I assume you, during the coming school year, you will continue to evaluate the needs.
Yes.
You know, prior to next budget year, to, if we need to have whatever we need to add more. But,
Yeah, because we also talked about how as our schedule changes and teachers, employees at schools know that more support is there, that there could be the chance of more referrals happening. And so we're well aware that our numbers and caseload could change, so evaluating them, we really do it monthly. You know, I had updated numbers, I sent them back out again last week and they've changed again. So I meet with this group every month because they are all invited to our monthly counselor meetings, so, and they know to reach out to me with any questions.
I just want to be sure the public knows, you know, because
Sure,
we hear a lot
absolutely.
about this, that we think this is a good starting point, it's not a fix from now on.
Yes, sir.
But,
It's
that we will
really based on
continue.
need, and we agree, and Mr. Manley's in agreement with that as well.
Thank you. Any questions of Ms. Simmons? Comments? Okay. 2021 school calendar, Mr. Henry.
Okay. This is going to be an interesting conversation. So
That's it, put that mic right in front.
There you go. I first will thank Ms. Cruz for coming up and speaking about it, and some of the same questions she talked about, or statements she made with the sample size and those kind of things are concerns I've expressed in here. And we sent out 7,500 surveys to parents. We got about 12% back. You know, then we asked online to do it. We did duplicate if you were an employee and a parent, but we only sent, if you were a parent of 3 kids in the school district, you only sent 1 scan code. So just to answer some of the questions that came up earlier. And I really don't know what else you do to try to get feedback. I mean, you know, we've put it out there, we've talked, and we've had a few people come speak out against the modified calendar here the last little bit. And I know y'all have heard, just speaking with you individually, y'all have heard from folks about it. So at this point, we're not ready to, you know, say that it's time to recommend a modified calendar. We've got a couple of other options in here that we want to talk to you about at this point. We did do a couple of calendars, Dr. Thorson did, and you know, our concern is trying to come up with the best calendar for our students. And with the way the legislature, who I'm going to continue to try to get people to talk to, the way they've done with the statute to say you can't start before the 3rd Monday has handcuffed school districts, in my opinion. And especially now with the dual enrollment things and the Oconee campus of the Tri-County Tech building, and we're trying to, at the state level, encourage dual enrollment and talk about that. They make it awful difficult when you can't finish your first semester until the middle of January, and when Tri-County Tech's not waiting on you to finish your first semester. They start their second semester the first part of January. So we have kids who are overlapping, who can't get to their class at Tri-County because they're taking an exam at their high school. And so we want to be able to finish the semester before Christmas. That's the most important thing in our minds with this calendar. And with the 3rd Monday coming up for the 2021 school year would be on August 17th. It still doesn't give you time to do that. So the modified calendar we've set off to the side, but in your items you see the first calendar option. We kind of went outside the box and did a calendar that doesn't meet the state statute at this time. It starts on the 10th of August, and this is probably the most perfect calendar I've seen in my time for doing what we want to do. It's amazing how it works. If you start the 10th, you can finish the first semester before Christmas. Kids can finish their dual enrollment classes in December, the first part of December. Tri-County's exams will probably be that week of the 7th. We'd finish up, and then when they came back after Christmas, they start second semester with us or Tri-County or both, and then we finish up before Memorial Day. And at my meeting last week, I've already reserved Little John for Saturday, May the 29th, 2021. So we're already on the books for it, unless y'all tell me to take that back. So this would be a calendar that doesn't meet the state statute at this point, although we've been given some indications that there's a possibility that we could get an exception for our county. The second calendar that kind of ties in with that one does meet the state statute. It starts on the third Monday, the 17th of August. And you can see because it pushes us back, we don't finish second semester until the 11th. So we're into January before, we're into the second full week of January before we could finish. That pushes us into June before we could finish up. We're still gonna have graduation on the 29th, okay, because seniors will take their exams early. But, how many elementary kids are coming back for half days on the first and second after graduation? Juniors, sophomores, juniors, and freshmen will have to come back because they'll be taking exams those 2 days. Less than ideal, but that's kind of the hand we have to deal with. We did get some information today that was new to me. I don't know when it came about, that we might be able to, if the board was so willing, to talk to the State Board of Education and present them with a calendar for our secondary schools that are on awarding Carnegie units and credit, need to be on the finished first semester. We might could get a waiver for them to start 5 days before our elementary schools. Not sure if that's, there'll be some pros to that, but there'll be some cons too. So that would be another thing we would have to survey parents on and get information about and find out. My initial reaction was the same, but it could be good. Ms. Simmons' group could use it to do some specific training and those kind of things. So all that said, we're coming to you, and I would like to ask that we continue as we move forward in this process to consider 2 calendars. One is the one that would start us on the 10th, provided we can get approval to do that, or either we just go rogue and try and see what happens. See what the state says to us. No. Or
Steve,
number 2.
While you're there,
Yeah.
what if we did?
I was kind of halfway joking, but I wasn't, because I told Dr. Thorson, I said, every year, when you just saw Ms. Moore's presentation, the state statute says they're supposed to fund us at the amount, $3,000, whatever it is, $95 for the base student cost. They've never come close. They break their own law when they do that.
So what could they do to us?
I don't know. Withhold funding, I would guess. I don't know.
Do you think they would?
Yeah. Withhold more funding. Only like give us for 175 days versus 180.
My doubts that they would withhold funding. We just, this is a calendar that fits our county, and this is what we're going to do. I'm sorry.
Yeah, well, that's kind of why I wanted you all to see if we could move forward with 2 options, just to kind of see, so we could research some more. If we need to go down to the state board and talk to them and see what the requirements would be to get a waiver, explain I mean, to me it makes all the sense in the world. If we just were doing it for convenience, it'd be one thing, but it's an academic issue for us.
I want to just say that before the meeting, Mr. Lee and I were talking, and every time I've thought about a different calendar for either one area of the county or one age group over another, I've always just dismissed it and said, no, that wouldn't be convenient. He kind of encouraged me to think about whether we could, because the State Board of Education would quite likely approve us starting on the 10th of August for secondary schools because of 2 very pertinent academic reasons. Number one, the overlap with Tri-County Tech. And our students not being able to start on time for second semester dual credit classes. But the second is, no one in South Carolina can control when AP tests are given. They're given the first and second week of May every year. So the more instructional days we can get in AP classes before those tests are given, the more prepared our students are going to be. So those 2 very specific academic reasons could probably get us a secondary calendar that would be a week earlier than elementary. Yes, it would create, for 2 weeks, the week that secondary started and the week that elementary was still going after secondary was out, there's a little bit of maybe inconvenience for certain families that have kids in both different levels. But I also thought, as we were talking, as far as instruction and HR, when we're doing professional development for our teachers at the beginning of the year, if we had secondary teachers the 3rd through the 7th of August, and all of the instruction staff could focus just on secondary teachers and the training they need this week, and then they start school, now they've got another whole week to just focus on elementary. There are some positives to that thought. I'm not saying it's something we should do. I've actually just thought about it since an hour or so ago with Mr. Lee. But it's not completely without merit if the state wouldn't allow the entire district to go to a second Monday start.
When Dr. Thorson, we started, I guess, mentioning this calendar 2 weeks ago or longer, and I wasn't real fond of the idea of high schools, middle starting a week early. After thinking about it, I have somewhat changed my mind. I think, well, number one, I think that's a much better solution than modified calendar. And I don't really think, and I may be wrong, and I'm sure I'll hear about it if I am, I really don't think 5 days, 5 school days difference in a high school student and an elementary student is going to create a big problem for families. And if I'm wrong, you know, back when I was doing this and raising children, it would not have created a problem for me. And I just don't believe it would create that if we had to. You know, I would love to see us be able to, excuse me, do the entire district. But if we had to get our first semester over by Christmas, I think it's something well worth considering and, you know, put it out and see what people think about it. We've got time since we're talking about a 2021 calendar year.
I think we need to consider it on the back burner. I think what we need to do is move forward with getting it all on the same. Two schedules, trying to run 2 schedules, you're gonna run into some problems. But now, what we need to fight for, I think, is the calendar you have right here.
For the entire district, I agree.
The entire district, yeah. Why would the state say it's okay for you to do the high school, but you can't do the elementary? I mean, I understand what you're saying, Dr. Thorson, but it just, I mean, that's...
Well, we need the folks that worked for and against the modified calendar to work that hard on our legislators to get this law changed and give the control back to the districts. What suits Oconee may not suit Horry County, and each county can do what they want to.
I guess my question would be on the power school side. Can you have 2 separate start dates? Because you will have,
135th days.
you have 2
districts,
separate start dates.
there are districts that I'm aware of who have had schools on a modified calendar and other schools not, so I know it's been done. Maybe not exactly like this configuration,
I'm
but I
wondering
do
if they have
know.
separate power schools.
I wouldn't think so. I
I
wouldn't think so.
believe, and I may be wrong, but I believe there's 1 or 2 other districts in this state that do what we were talking about, start their high schools early.
They may.
I believe,
I'm not sure.
I believe they are. You know, that's easy to
And just
find out.
to re-emphasize something I think everybody up here agrees on, I think that it's important that people understand these 5 individuals are elected in Oconee County to make decisions about the school district. And in talking to a legislator who said that the 3rd Monday start date was a compromise between those who wanted Labor Day and those who wanted early August, my point was that shouldn't even be a discussion for the state legislature, because we have an elected body in every school district in our state that should make decisions for their local school district. It's not, it would be like the federal government coming in and saying, you can't, no school in the country can, why? Why be involved in it when we have a local body that can make that decision best for each county? Just because a legislative body has authority doesn't mean they should take that authority. And I think the lower the level of government that can effectively make a decision, the more effective it's going to be for the community, because they're closer to the people. Nobody knows the people in Oconee County better than people that live in Oconee County. And the 5 of you live here, you can make the best decision for our schools. And even though Senator Alexander, Mr. Sandifer, Mr. Whitmire, they all live in our county and they know our schools well, they're only a very small part of the state legislature in Columbia. So the most effective decision for Oconee County needs to be made by Oconee County people, in my opinion.
Well, being an old math teacher, and I think I taught on that first calendar. That's the way we used to.
Mm-hmm.
And it sure does make it a lot easier for
We
everybody.
actually started a little earlier than that.
And out of all the calendars we've looked at, this is the one I like to see.
The reasons you gave, and I think you did an excellent job of doing that, but that's why we now have a county council to take to let the local districts run the district instead of it being run from the state level. The people here in this county, the people who are elected, know a little bit more about what's needed than they do in Columbia or in Washington.
I agree.
So we need everyone's help in convincing, I think we have the support of our delegation. It's,
Right.
it's statewide.
And I do want to publicly say, our delegation has been very receptive to this. They're not saying that we shouldn't have some lenience on this, but there are legislators in our state who are unwilling to give that leniency. And like I said, we don't have a majority with the 3 that we have. And I would call on the entire legislature to make a change in this.
Well, if home rule is good for the council, then home rule should be good for school boards.
I agree.
Well, we will continue to research and check things out and come back in another time with more discussion about the calendar in 2 weeks.
But with Vic and Greg's help, let's get this calendar out to the public and, get some comments on it. But I think it's a great calendar.
I'm ready to vote on it.
And just to make it real clear, I'm not sure we specifically said, so the current state law says you cannot start before the 3rd Monday in August unless you're on a modified calendar. Later on in that legislation, it says the state board can approve exceptions to this law for very specific academic reasons. So someone from the State Department called me last week and said that it was her opinion that we could get an exception for our secondary schools. She did not think we would get one for the entire district. So if we wanted to do this for our middle and high schools, we would be going to the State Board of Education requesting an exception to the 3rd Monday start date. And she felt like that we may get that approved. So that's kind of where we are.
Let's start. Ask for everything and see what we get.
Okay.
Anything else on the school calendar?
No, sir, on the calendar.
Okay, the 2 action items. First reading of policy JICDA, Code of Conduct. Ms. Tandy.
Yes, and really, as I told you before, Ms. Hughes meets with the assistant principals who typically handle this one at the schools, and so there's a coding change on page 11, which is inappropriate behavior. Power School Code is now 017. We had a different number in there for some reason that wasn't matching up, so we made that correction. And then on page 14, you will see that the instance with the people using the vape, the students vaping and that rather than doing that. We'd added electronic cigarettes before, but we specified with the vaping devices and materials, it falls under the tobacco use and possession guidelines by the law. And so we now have that, and our officers are writing blue tickets just like they would if you were possessing tobacco under age and had it on school grounds. So that's been, Ms. Hughes is trying to do a lot of education. She's developed a PowerPoint to share with the students in like their advisee class, share with parents at family nights and that. You would not believe the amount of money, valuables we have in her office where they've collected things from these, when the drug dog hits on a car for vape, the vape, it hits it just like it does tobacco. So we're trying, it's becoming an issue. We're trying to educate our students and our parents, because a lot of the parents don't fully understand the significance of it. But, so we needed to step that up, so we wanted to make sure there'd be no questions that it was included in there. So that goes from the bottom of page 14 on to page 15. And then the only other change that I recall is just on the date at the very back on page 20. So we would ask that you approve those changes, because we want to get the updated behavioral book out for bid on, we order about 500 copies of it. We'll translate it to Spanish. It takes us a while to get everything done, so we'd like to get that moving once you guys give us final approval. So we'll ask you to approve that.
Any questions on that one?
You want to do them separate, or you want to do them together?
JICFAA, harassment, intimidation.
Okay, you want to do them together?
Yeah, we'll
Okay,
do them
sure.
together.
Okay, no problem.
The same section.
This is the policy that we had worked with the committee, the community committee against bullying had helped us with, and the only thing we wanted to do was make the change just to give a definition of bullying, because some people say bullying when it's an isolated incident. I think I use the example, if I just come up and I'm ugly to Miss Simmons tonight, and then we go on and I never cross paths with her again or whatever, I'm just being mean and whatever. I'm not being bullied, you know. But if I make a constant, if I'm constantly saying something to her, or messing with her, or do something degrading, or physically doing something, then there's a difference. It's a pattern. So we wanted to make sure that we had that definition in there, because we do want to make sure we're addressing bullying and those things, but we also need to understand that not everything that happens in a school where kids don't get along is bullying. And so we're trying to make sure we can differentiate between that. So that was the biggest part of that change, just getting that definition. So those are our two that Ms. Hughes and I would like for you to approve.
Any questions or comments on either policy? Could we get a motion to approve policy JICDA and JICFAA on first reading?
Mr. Chairman, make a motion to approve policy JICDA and JICFAA.
Second.
Motion and second. Discussion? The motion is to approve policy JICDA, Code of Conduct, and policy JICFAA, Harassment, Intimidation, or Bullying. All in favor? It's unanimous. And that concludes the open session portion of our meeting. We will go into executive session for employment recommendations and changes, and will return shortly. Without objection, we will move into executive session. Go into executive session and be back shortly.